Hello everyone and welcome back to the Empire Build Academy. My name is Fabian. This is the Empire Build Academy. I do all kinds of mobile strategy, games, guides, reviews, that kind of thing on this channel. But one of my favourite games of all time, and one that I do play a lot, and you'll also notice there's probably more of this guide currently on my channel, is Evony. And today I wanted to take a look at the wall generals on Evony and what we can do to improve them. So welcome back to the channel. Like I say, if you are new, this is Fabian. I do lots of guides that I mentioned on different mobile war games, including Rise of Kingdoms, Guns of Glory. I'm going to jump into some of the new ones as well. I also have a website, and just so you can see what it looks like, this is what you will find when you go there, and you can see that you can click on the different guides. This is the ones that I've started with. As you can see, Evony is in there as well, but I will be looking to improve this, add all my guides to it, and eventually they will all follow my 9-step process, where I will do all of these 9 stages that you can see in here as a video and as a blog post, so that you're armed with the information for all the different games. And it'd be awesome if you could subscribe and support me by liking this video. So as I said, I was talking about the wall generals. That's what I want to talk about today. It's one of those where I just haven't got to grips with it personally myself. There's always something that I can be doing. So let's go over to the game now, the Evony game. I'm playing it on PC, so it may look a little bit different in terms of its layout to what you can see. But just to show you what I've got, you can see I'm 2.4 billion in power. A lot of that power comes from my troops, and if we go into my current troops, that from a cavalry perspective, I've got 290 million T1. Now, as a T1 trap or a T1 defense, it's kind of not here nor there in terms of which one I'm doing, really, because 290 isn't really enough for a T1 trap, and I could be doing a lot more in terms of the higher tiers if I wanted to be a T1 defense. So I'm sort of in the middle of not really benefiting from that, and that's one of the reasons I've done this video, is because I wanted to do a bit of research behind what happens with the T1 trap, the T1 defense, what's the difference between the two, what do I need to be doing going forward, and that's where we are today. Now, in terms of the equipment, let me just show you the equipment that is on Queen Boudica, which is my main general on my keep. Did I go past her? There she is. She's ascended all the way to 5-star, and you can see she does quite a bit on the mounted troops, and she also does some work with the ground troops as well, working its way down. I'm sure a lot of people do use Queen Boudica. It's one of those that we are sort of pushed upon us from the beginning, and that seems to be, unless you're a payer, this kind of seems to be the way we all go when it comes to having a decent defense on Evony. In terms of her equipment, I've got Choreo bow with some flat refines there, although you will notice there is a percentage one in there as well. And I've got the helmet, which also comes with the flat refines. I've got the Parthian armor. I've got the Parthian leg, again flat refines. And then Choreo boots down at the bottom. You may notice that it says ground troop load there. I will show you the reason for that in a moment. And then finally, I have the bracers, which also come with the flat refines for mounted troop attack. Now, I did mention there was one of them that didn't seem like it was right with the ground troop load, and that's because I'm doing the advanced refine. I haven't got around to it yet, but you can see on the boots, basically what happens is if you've got, and this is just for those people that may not know, if you've got, let's go back into my general, let's go back into Queen Boudica, and let's use the top one as an example, and click on refine. You can see she's got 4 out of 4 gold refines on that. And then when you do that on a special piece of equipment like the Choreo, that then opens up advanced refine for that. And if I go to the boots, this is also the same. And if I go on to refine for this one, you can see that I've got all 4 gold, but the gold one I just sort of stuck at the first one it landed on, so I could open up that advanced refine. So basically, at some point, once I've got the resources to be able to do so, I need to change that ground troop load to a mounted troop defense flat refine. So that is the reason for that. I do have those other 2 pieces as well, which I can also do it on, which is something I would definitely be looking to do. So on the bracers, let's go into that. You can see I'm not really anywhere near it. So you can see on the bracers, I've got a lot of work to do to open the advanced refine on that. And then the helmet is, again, I need to get all of them gold to open up the advanced refine. And just to show you what the advanced refine does, let's go back over to this and click on the advanced refine, and I'll use the first one, the bow, as an example. Advanced refine, click on that, and you can see that the all troop attack is 14.5% at level 25 for the advanced refine. Now, if I hadn't have opened that up, I'd be missing out on that 14.5%, and that is the reason why that is like that. Again, and just to show you now, so advanced refine, you get 50 chances every single day, but you have to use your refine stones to be able to do this. But if I just keep my finger down on that, you can see this shooting up every single day. Imagine doing this on all your different pieces of equipment. And let's just use the last few that I've got there. Again, a few 10s there as well, which definitely helps. So I've got 353k of the refine stone, so there's absolutely no excuse when it comes to the refine events in the valuable event tabs that I will be able to potentially do the other ones as well and open that up. So I'll have 4 total choreo refines on the go with this advanced refine. And that one there was all troops attack. If we're going to have a look at the second one, you can see it's HP. You can see again, I get the 50 all over again. It's 50 per weapon every single day. So if you haven't done this with your main equipment, and when I say main equipment, you can't do it with just the normal equipment. It has to be, go back into that advanced refining, one of these kind of sets. So it's the sets that sort of cost money, or you have to really do some grind before you can open up a piece of these. And just to go down here as well, I've got 2 on the Sasanian set, if I said that right. And that is the same again. I can go in there. I've got my 50 every single day. Again, you can see that these would make some real big difference in terms of the buffs that you're getting for the long term. So it's definitely worth doing, and that's something, like I say, I will do on the other one. But let's go back into this now. So I'm talking about the wall defense. That's what I'm talking about today. I sort of went off track there a little. So let's get straight back on track. And the first thing that I want to talk about is what's the difference? I mentioned earlier, T1 defense, I mentioned T1 trap, and I talked about the 2 not being the same thing. So let's get straight into it with this. T1 trap versus T1 defense. In Evony, a T1 trap primarily utilises a large number of Tier 1 troops for defense, focusing on soaking up damage from the enemy attack, particularly solo attacks, and that's important, and disrupting their attack patterns. T1 defense, while still relying on T1 troops because you still need them, often incorporates more layers of higher tier troops and aims for a more balanced and sustainable defense against various attack types, including rallies. And that's the difference here. The difference between a T1 trap and a T1 defense primarily is T1 trap is good for solo hits. It's not good for taking rallies. You'll get hurt very, very quickly. Whereas the T1 defense is setting yourself up. Obviously, rallies are tough anyway, especially if the opponent has got some ridiculous buffs on there and there's loads of people joining. But what the point is, the T1 trap would not do well against those rallies. So let's have a look at what T1 trap does for itself. So the focus is designed to overwhelm and absorb attacks, especially solo attacks, from stronger players by using massive numbers of T1 troops, particularly T1 mounted. And when we say massive troops, we are talking 300 million plus, which, if you noticed when I went into mine, I don't actually have that many. I only have 269 million. So there's a lot of work I would need to do if I wanted to become a T1 trap. Effectiveness works well against solo attacks and can be effective at disrupting standard attack strategies, but may not hold up against well-organised rallies. Example, a player might have 500 million T1 mounted troops aiming to survive the initial volley of a strong attacker's march. Weakness, vulnerable to rallies, especially if the attacker has strong buffs or a high march size, and that is key. There's been a lot of rallies that I've gone into while trying to be an effective T1 trap, and it just hasn't worked very well at all. Now, T1 defense, this is a more balanced approach in terms of its focus that includes T1 troops as part of a layered defense with higher tier troops. This aims to handle a wider range of attacks, including rallies. The effectiveness, more robust against various attack types, including rallies, but requires more careful planning, troop composition and strategic layering. Example, player might have a mix of T1 troops, T2, T3, and then higher tier troops, which tends to be ranged with specific layers designed to counter different troop types in the attacker's march. The weakness, it requires a more significant investment, and yes it does, in higher tier troops, and more complex troop management, and may not be as effective against solo attacks as a dedicated T1 trap. So that is T1 defense versus T1 trap. There is a confusion between the two. I am one of those people that has been confused between the two, hence the reason for this video and just trying to dig in a little bit more. Key differences, let's go into this. So we've got the feature and the relevant argument for that versus each other. So troop composition, T1 trap is primarily T1 troops, especially T1 mounted. T1 defense is a mix of T1 and high tier troops with strategic layering. Attack focus, T1 trap will be solo attacks and disrupting attack patterns. T1 defense rallies and a wider range of attacks. Defense depth relies on sheer volume of T1 troops for T1 trap. That's why we're talking 300 million should be a minimum. Whereas the T1 defense balance layers of different troop tiers. Investment, T1 trap, primarily food and wood. Relatively cheap training. T1 defense requires more resource investment for higher tier troops, and they do become expensive when you start going into the T10 plus. Troop composition, T1 trap, primarily T1 troops, especially T1 mounted, and for the T1 defense, a mix of T1 and higher tier troops with strategic layering. So, in essence, a T1 trap is specialised, low-cost defense that can be effective against certain attack types, while a T1 defense is a more versatile approach that requires more planning and investment, but can handle a broader range of attacks. Where does that put me? Well, that puts me quite simply in the middle of the two, to be honest. I say in the middle of the two. From a high tier perspective, I could potentially go down the T1 defense, but it is expensive. And when people say it requires more investment, and it requires more investment from higher tiers, let's go into the ranged tier and have a look at what I'm talking about. So 14, T14, I've got 370,000. I could have a lot more than that. Same with the T13. T12, I've got quite a bit, and that's because I use that for any kind of quick, cheap solo attacks or any rally attacks that I can get involved with. I just send the T12 there across, and then there's the T11 and the T10. So when you look at my ranged, you would definitely think that I'm more geared to a T1 trap, and that's where I think I'm going to be heading. So, but if you wanted to be a T1 defense, you would need more high, probably bigger layers of these to be able to handle the rallies, and that would be across the board as well in terms of the different troop types that you need. So you can see how expensive it gets, but it actually is more than that. Obviously, when you are getting attacked, and I don't know if I've got any decent ones from the past, I probably have actually. PvP reports, let me just go and have a look at some of these. So this was an 18.7 billion, and it was hitting me when I was 2.8 billion, so I definitely had more in terms of the troop type. And if we go into the buff side of things, my buffs versus his buffs, you can see he was 3,900 on the siege. My debuffs are not too bad. They could be better, always could be better, but they're not bad. They're all right. And in terms of the attack itself, we can see that, what did I have back then? Because I have changed where I thought, no, I'm going to go T1 trap, when I really didn't understand what I was doing, I'll be honest. So I had 243 million T1 trap, but what was key here is I actually had more on the higher side of things. So if I go to right to the top, you can see from a ranged, a ground, a mounted, there was a lot more millions in there, which was soaking up the attack. And I can still do that. I can. It's so difficult to decide because I'm not going to be putting any more money into this game. So kind of where I'm at is what I've got. And that's why I want to make the decision. Honestly, I've done videos before where I'm undecided and still am at the moment. So anyway, let's go into the different generals. So these are the European ones: Richard the Lionheart, Queen Boudica, Jadwiga, William Marshall, Leo III, Leonidas I, Sappho, and Isaac Brock. Isaac Brock is my current assistant general. Americans, we've got James Bowie, George Dewey, Zachary Taylor. Japan, we have Kusanagi, Oda, Yodo, Takanaka. Korean, we have Yi Sun Sin. Arabian, we have Shah Jahan. And then for others, we have Lothang, Tranhung, and Lataro. Now, what I want to do is just jump across to some awesome websites. So we've got quite a few that we can actually check here. So I'm just going to jump across here. So this is One Chilled Gamer. And what they've done is, if we go right back to the top here, this is the best Evony defense generals that they've got there. And what they've got here is, please find below the best defense generals depending on your keep's dominant troop type. Each category contains the 10 best generals with the best at the top. For more details how to develop, you can obviously go over to One Chilled Gamer and see the rest. For the ground side of things, they say that these Evony generals are best used by players with large amounts of ground troops. In particular, they benefit from a large ground troop HP buff, giving them huge durability. And you can see that they have all of them listed here. Now, I did mention that sometimes you don't have to use all the ones that are specific wall generals, and you can see that is the case here with Zhang Fei. Zhang Fei and Miltiades, they're not actually specific wall generals, but they come top on the best Evony defense generals in One Chilled Gamer's list. And if we click on Zhang Fei, let's just do that now, and we can see that the reason he will be there is because it will say when leading the army, and that's again the key stat here. Increases ground troops attack and HP by 50%, ground troops and mounted troops defense by 40% when general is leading the army. So that is a very, very decent general to use on your wall defense if obviously you can send him quite high. Now let's go back and see what else they've got. So we've got all the others as well. Isaac Brock, he's one of the specialised defence generals. And then you can see we've got all the other ones going all the way down that you can see there. For ranged, let's go and have a look at the ranged side of things. You can see Sigurd comes out top, Zachary Taylor, Arthur Wellesley, who's a relatively new general, also finds himself on the list, and so does Franz Joseph as well. We go down to Siege, and you can see Champlain is at the top there, and he is very new indeed. Edward Teach, Takanaka. I see a lot of people using Takanaka because he is good for many different things, not just siege. And then on the mounted side of things, this is the one I wish I'd have noticed before, because I wasn't aware that you could do this, and I've already mentioned in this video about Håkon Haraldsson, and if I'd have known, I'd have gone after him. And so there is a potential there. I've got two scenarios. I could wait for a new mounted general like Håkon to come out, or I could wait for that specialised general, wall defence general, to come out and go for them. But you can see that Håkon is a very good option. Queen Boudica, she's still in 5th place, so she's still very strong for people to use if that is what you want to go with, and that's what you've got. That's currently what I've got. And then you can see all the other things as well, so it's worth checking that out. If we go across to Evony Guide Wiki at the top, and this breaks it down into more detail, and you can see that Takanaka is top on this one here. Ranking A, focus on rearguard aggression and vanguard durability. You can also see that Champlain has been added. So we've got Takanaka at number 1. We've got William Marshall plus the skin at number 2. Isaac Brock comes in 3rd. Incidentally, if we went all the way down, you can see not rankable, very advanced Queen Boudica. If we go again onto the next one, which is the total value of all buffs, Takanaka again comes out very high. He is top. Isaac Brock is still there as well. That was one that I wish I could have got back in the day, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm still saving those general tokens, so that is all good. And you can see again, going all the way down this list, Queen Boudica comes in 12th, and then we've got these ones as well. And if you have a look at overall rating here, the most powerful is Takanaka, but since only a very small number of heavy players can train him to the maximum, many people may want to consider other options. He's very difficult to obtain. He's not even included in the 99.99 event package. My recommendation outside of Takanaka is Leo III or Isaac Brock, or if you can get the skin, William Marshall. Next are George Dewey, Zachary Taylor, William Marshall no skin, Yodo Dono, Richard the Lionheart. And if you value siege, you've got Champagne and Leo. Ranged and siege is George. Ranged troops, Zachary and Yodo Dono. For a balance, go with William Marshall and Richard the Lionheart. Ground, Isaac Brock, and then mounted is Queen Boudica again. So Queen Boudica, I know a lot of us have Queen Boudica, and she's still going to be very strong at the moment. If that's all you can get, and as we know, for the free-to-play especially, Queen Boudica is definitely a strong argument. Special note, it says here, quirks for Champlain, almost exclusively siege machine buffs, not recommended for those below the keep level 40. So that is to be taken into consideration. Queen Boudica, if the focus is on T1 mounted troop defense and not on higher tier mounted troop, there is little point in using Queen Boudica, as she has absolutely no value buff, which is important for the T1. So they're saying if you're using Queen Boudica, then you need high tier mounted troops as well. Special note for Richard the Lionheart quirks, because of its low attack, it needs to have a huge number of troops compared to using the defense generals to compensate for this. So that is taken into consideration there. There is obviously a lot more drop down as well. I won't read all of it, but if you go to evonyguidewiki.com and if you have a look at their best defense general, then you can read through more of this. I just wanted to get an understanding of what other people are saying. And again, you can see on this, Takanaka is coming out there. William Marshall keeps popping up. Isaac Brock keeps popping up. But these are going to be difficult to get now because they're not going to be that 17% that I was showing you earlier in the general token possibility percentage coming out. So these were great when they first came out. They would be very difficult to get now and be potentially able to level them up. So as much as these are good, they're probably not going to be useful now if you haven't got them, is the way I'd see that. And then the last one we got is the cool top games. This is Evony Defense General over there. And this is, again, if you was doing in-city ground troops, they'd either go for Isaac Brock or Leonardis, or we can also have a look as well. Mounted, Queen Boudica still comes up there, as you can see. And for ranged, they've got Zachary, Yodo, and George. And for siege, they've got Takanaka, Leo III, George Dewey, and William Marshall. So that gives us some really good insight as to what we can do there. And if we then take that into consideration with everything else we've said and what I'm planning to do. So let's go back to the Evony PC scene. So there's a lot of information to take in there for the best wall general. But one of the things that is still prominent and still useful is that Queen Boudica is still very much a decent option. But obviously making sure that if you're going for trap and you're only going for low tier mounted troops, she wouldn't be any good. She needs to be for a defense-based account, for a defense-based keep where you have the higher tiers involved. For me personally, and again, I'm going to jump back into my items, and I am going to be considering and thinking, because I'm going to be obviously on the mounted side of things. That is what I'm going to be on. But with these 50 premium ones that I've got, and the 6 glory and the 2 normal, I think it's a case of waiting for either A, that decent mounted general to come out, or B, potentially waiting a long time, because I don't know when there's going to be the plan for it to happen, for the defense specific wall general. That may be a better idea, because it's been a while since one has been brought out. I'd imagine it would be fairly decent, especially if K50 is going to become a thing. And so that is what I'd say with that. But let me know what your thoughts are. What are you doing with your wall defense general? Who are you using as an assistant? For me, I was talking about the fact that I was using Isaac Brock, and now I've realised that that is not a good thing to do. So if I go into this now, the one that I would be potentially using now is Hakan, because he has some very, very good stats that will go along with this, including that increased mounted troop attack and HP by 50% and the ground troop and mounted troop defense by 40%. He is going to be a better assistant for me. Specialities, I don't think I did anything on Hakan, so that is something that I would also need to consider. And obviously way up versus what I've already spent on Isaac Brock. But let me know what you think. Am I doing the right thing? Would you advise me to go for the new mounted general when they come out? Or would you ideally say that the best scenario is to wait for the main city defense general to come out, which has got to be surely very, very soon? So we know Queen Boudica is decent in terms of early game and what they throw at you. the last general that was thrown at this game was, in terms of premium, was Isaac Brock. And defense generals don't come often, and that is why when a new one is released, and surely we're due one soon, surely we are due one soon, that when you do use that premium general, it's going to last you a while. It's going to last you a year, 2 years. That's the thought process. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work like that, but I would anticipate, especially with K50 potentially coming up, and the fact that a lot of people are now, spenders are now K45 with T16 troops, I think the next defense general is going to be a decent, strong, mounted defense general. That's my thought process. And what I'm doing, if I go into my items, I'll show you straight away here. Originally I was going to say for siege. Now I've changed my mind. I've got 50 of the Epic Historic General Premium. I've got 6 the Epic Historic General Glory, and then I've just got 2 of the normal, which probably you'd need some serious luck to get anything with them. But I have 56 between the 2 of these, and I'm going to continue saving up, and I'm actually keeping my fingers crossed that it doesn't come out within the next month, because I wouldn't be quite ready to be able to ascend to a 5-star. The reason I say that is because when a general comes out, is always a big percentage given by Evony that general will appear using these 2 tokens. The thoughts are that between 70 and 90 of these 2 tokens gives you a strong chance, certainly need a little bit of luck, that you are going to get the general that you're aiming for, or the general that's been released, to 5-star with all the different copies you need. So if I went into this one, and I went into Historic General Summoning, you can see the current one is Alexander Hamilton. And I'm not going to summon, nearly clicked the wrong one there. And if I went on to this one, Reward List, I know I'd click the wrong buttons. Okay, so if I go into the Reward List and I look at the chance details, you can see Alexander Hamilton is 17.5%. Almost 1 in 5 are coming out Alexander Hamilton. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for this particular special general to be a defense general, and that's when I'm going to use all my tokens in one go with that percentage buff to do that. Now if I actually go back into the items again, and then remember it's Alexander Hamilton, and if I go down to my tokens and I click on Epic Historic General, and I'll go into detail and chance, you can see Alexander Hamilton is top there, 9.57%. The others are 0.48. So again, Alexander Hamilton has a way stronger possibility of coming out in this than the others. And then last but not least, let's go into the premium tokens, because that was the historic. The glory one was the one that I just showed you. And the premium ones, if I go into detail, chance details on this, you can see Alexander Hamilton 17.7%, with all the others being 0.88% or less. You see where I'm coming from. I am saving those tokens. I am hoping that I will be able to ascend my general. It would be awesome if I got 5-star. It really would. But I'm going to need a lot of luck, and also a lot more of these premium tokens. It might be one of those where I might have to just swallow up and spend the £100, the £200 to get an additional 3 there. That's something that I will consider depending on when it's released. It might be one of those. It's not released for another 6 months, and I get really, really close. But that is the thought process behind that. Now, the other thing to consider when I do this is the assistant. And the assistant can also play a big part in terms of the buffs that are coming along. So let's just say I wanted to be Queen Boudica and I wanted an assistant, which currently I'm using Isaac Brock. Now, I just want to go into the recruitment side of things. I want to go back into portraits. This time I want to click on mounted. I want to look at Cheng, and you can see increases mounted troops attack by 45% and increases ground troops and mounted troops defense and HP by 35% when general is leading the army. Now, this person isn't a defense general, but I'm led to believe from the research I've done today that when it says general is leading the army, this here will count towards the defense of my keep. So instead of including Isaac Brock on this, I can include Cheng. He would be a much better option to be able to do so. So as you can see with the Wall General, there is a lot of different things we can do. And the key take from this video is if we go back onto this, and again, I will actually convert this into a blog post so that if you wanted to read it that way, you can. But that is the T1 trap versus the T1 defense. That is what your T1 trap is primarily. Again, I will post all this on the blog post. This is your T1 defense and what they focus on and what their role is. And then, of course, we've got the key differences between the two. Now, when it comes to wall generals that you use, this is one of those where, again, let's just say if you are going for ground, you would be looking at someone like Isaac Brock. That's who you would be potentially looking at. If you are going with mounted, then of course Queen Boudica is a great option. Ranged, we'd be looking at Zach Taylor, who I believe is in the Americans, in Defense Generals in there. And then for Siege, we've got Takanaka, who actually, as an all-round general, is probably one of the best. But like I say, there are a lot of important things that go into this. And one of the big ones that I did, one of the mistakes that I did, without a doubt, is, just going to go back over to the game 1 second. And one of the mistakes that I made, without a doubt, is potentially using Isaac Brock when, of course, and I'm just going to go back into the generals over here via the tavern. And I'm sure there will be, this will be a constant changing thing. Let's just go into recruit, portraits. And again, I'm looking at mounted because a mounted is definitely one of the big things. And if we have a look at Judge Monk, leading the army to attack, increases ground troops and when he brings any dragons. So he would be no good. Again, just trying to have a look at what actually is available. Hakan, he increases attack. See, now leading the army. So would that... This is something I need you guys out there to answer in the comments. Again, I'm just trying to get a really good understanding. Because when I was doing the review and I was doing the research, I'm trying to find the information as to who I need to go alongside a mounted general that I hope they bring out in the future. They were talking that the assistant doesn't have to be a actual fully fledged defense general. They were saying that general leading the army would be okay. So if you have a look at this guy here, mounted troops attack and HP by 50% and increases ground troops and mounted troops defense by 40%. Am I wrong in thinking that Hakan could also cover that role? Am I misunderstanding that? So again, I just want to have a look at Hakan. Who else is there? Let's have a look at them. And again, he has that general is leading the army to attack. To attack, I think that's the key. Whereas he's general is leading the army. So if I'm right, Hakan could fulfill the assistant role for Queen Boudica if I wanted to do that. And I'm just going to go across to the other mounted as well, because one of them that definitely showed up was this guy. And here's another one again where it says general is leading the army, but surely Hakan is better. I'm going to have loads of people shouting out in the comments, no, you're not looking at this right. This is what you should be looking at. I feel like I've missed someone. Zhang Fei. Ground troops attack and HP by 50% and ground troops and mounted troops defense by 40%. He is another one that popped up when I was looking around for assistance, and Zhang Fei would also be a good option. But obviously the ground troop attack and HP and then the mounted troop defense by 40%, I'm not sure. Give me your ideas on assistance in the comments. Who should I be looking at? Because like I say, I'm going to go with the mounted general main. Hopefully it'll be someone different to Queen Boudica. But who would be the best as an assistant? Like I say, currently I've been using Isaac Brock. Let's go back into the generals. Let's go into portraits. Let's have a look at Isaac. We can go into defense generals. And Isaac, his stats were city ground troops and mounted troops attack and HP by 30. And in-city ground troops attack and defense by 20. Again, now I'm going to go back to mounted, and this time I'm going to have a look at Hakan. And increases mounted troop attack and HP by 50, and increases ground troops and mounted troops defense by 40 when general is leading the army. That is where I'm going to leave this particular video. So we now have an understanding of what the difference is between T1 trap and T1 defense. We have an idea with the advanced refining and how we can gain some additional buffs. I've also spoke about the kind of troop layers that we need for either or. the next question, last question, I'm leaving out to you guys out there. Which assistant should I be having? And am I looking at Håkan Haraldsson correctly, that he could also fulfill that role quite well? Do let me know in the comments what you think. And I will, like I say, go ahead and turn this post into a blog post. And I will see you all in another video very, very soon. Thanks for watching. Please do support the channel by subscribing. See you soon.